So I was like, I need to do something else, but I need to figure out something where I don't have to interact with people every day and I don't have to leave my house. And so I settled on
I love
writing.
the criteria.
Wow. Nick, that's right up your alley, right?
Yeah, Dick, you're right in line with me. I love it.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to the show, everyone. How are you doing today, Mr. Nick?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Yourself?
I'm doing very well. I'm just kind of enjoying the quiet time before it gets cold here. It's already getting chilly up here in Memphis. I know you're down the Keys. It's probably like 90 and warm, but...
Well, we're recording this with hurricanes floating around, so when this comes out, it'll be beyond that, and hopefully we won't have had another one. But actually, yeah, spring and autumn in the Keys is really, really nice, especially, honestly, the autumn, because the water temperature is still warm. So diving, it's still warm, really warm, and it's good. The humidity drops a little bit. The temp drops down a little bit, so you're more in 70s, and it's I dig this time of year here.
So we have a great guest today, though, too. We got Alex Sigmore, who is a mystery thriller writer. He's done a couple of great series that he's got out there with Emily Slate. I was just drawing a blank on it. I was going to go Emily Blunt.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
No, Emily Slate. I mean, he's got some great stuff. It's right, Nora would be really big fans with him. But I think before we get going, we have a question today.
What you got?
See, our question actually comes from Ben, who is in Florida, and he wants to know what we think the funniest movie ever is.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what I think the funniest movie ever is, but I'm gonna tell you a really funny movie that I have an amazing memory of. So do you remember Steve Martin in My Blue Heaven?
Oh, yeah. With, wasn't it Rick Moranis in there with him?
Yeah, and he's a guy in witness protection. So I went to see it in the cinema with my dad. And for some reason, and we were both sober, we thought it was the funniest movie of all time. It's something about that day, and the humor hit us, and we were barely laughing out loud. People were looking at us like, what the hell is wrong with those two? But it was one of them just fantastic memories of spending time with someone. It was a beautiful memory of a day with my dad that we were really enjoying each other's company. It was great. Yeah. So that's what I'm going with. What you got?
I was just going to throw out a funny movie, and now you have this poignant story.
You can do that. You can do that.
I was going to go Blazing Saddles.
Oh my God.
That was my first instinct, was to say Blazing. I think it's one of the funniest movies. I don't know if it's necessarily the funniest, but it is one of my favorites. But anything that Mel Brooks did was Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles.
All that stuff was crazy funny. Crazy funny. All right. Should we chat with our guest?
Let's get on to our guest. Yes, we need to chat with Alex here. So, like I said, he's the thriller author of the Emily Slate FBI mystery and also the Ivy Bishop mystery series. So welcome to the show, Alex. We're so excited to have you here. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great to see you guys too. I shaved for this, even though, I know no one can see us.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started first with writing and kind of just the basics of your career so far.
Sure, yeah. Well, it started way back when, I was born, because I was born a writer. But no, actually, I'm not one of those people that was that I felt like destined.
I bet that pencil was a pain.
Oh yeah. No, that was not good. I've never been one of the people who've been like, I've always been meant to be a writer. But when I was in elementary school, I tried writing books, quote unquote books. And, they were like 1-page chapter books about people coming out of the center of the earth, something like that. But it never really led to anything. And I never really thought it would lead to anything. And in my mid to late 20s, my father passed away and I inherited his business. And if you want to know what kind of business it was a property management business. And I am not a good property manager, basically a landlord, right? But it turns out I'm actually the worst property manager in the world because I only raised the rent one time in 13 years, and it was by $50.
Oh my God.
Actually, you sound like me. I have the same problem.
I want to rent from you.
Yeah, I have one tenant who's been paying me the same rent, and I just can't raise it. She pays on time, and I'm like, I don't see any point in raising it. It's paying my bills. So.
Yeah, no, I feel bad. Like, I was like, my tenants are like little old ladies and stuff. I was like, I'm not going to raise the rent on these people, but you can't survive doing that. And, I could kind of see the writing on the wall. So I was like, I need to do something else, but I need to figure out something where I don't have to interact with people every day and I don't have to leave my house. And so I settled on
I love
writing.
the criteria.
Wow. Nick, that's right up your alley, right?
Yeah, Dick, you're right in line with me. I love it.
But that was the only thing I could really think of. I mean, everything else required, social interaction. And I'm very much an introverted person. So I took a little time. I tried to learn how to write, tried to figure out if I could even do it. Sat down and wrote a novel. It took me like 7 or 8 months. That novel's never been published and it never will because it's terrible, as are the 3 that followed it. But after that, I finally started getting into publishing. I actually wanted to try to do trad first because I didn't even know about self-publishing. And I went to like the conferences in New York. I forget, the Writer's Digest conferences. And I would pitch, and I would pitch agents and stuff. And what I found is in the time that I was waiting for the agents to get back to me, I was writing like another book or two. Because it takes them, 6 or 8 months to really get back to you, even if they want more, and it's not just a blanket no. So a friend turned me on to self-publishing. They're like, hey, this thing's coming up. Would you consider this? And I was like, I don't know much about it, but, I took a crash course in it, learned everything that I could. It's a steep learning curve. But once you're there, you're kind of like, hey, I could do this. So I started off publishing sci-fi because I like Star Trek and I thought that's what I was supposed to be publishing. That's not what I was supposed to be publishing. So I ended up writing about 25 books in sci-fi before I realized that I was in the wrong genre. And that's when I decided to switch over to mystery and thriller.
Gotcha. So when did you publish the first sci-fi and when did you switch?
I published my first sci-fi book in September of 2018. And then I switched everything over at the beginning of 2022. I started writing mystery thrillers on January 1st, 2022, and published the first book in June of that year.
So you're pumping out. I mean, you did 25 books in less than 4 years in the sci-fi series?
I did, yeah. And in my mystery thriller series, I'm up to 21 books now.
Good Lord. How many are you doing a year?
The first year I did like 8 or 9. Last year I did, I think, 10. And this year I backed off a lot. I only have like 4 or 5, I think.
Oh, only 4 or 5.
Do you feel inadequate, Nick?
I totally feel inadequate.
I feel like inadequate.
Yeah, we just talked to RJ at last show, and then we're talking to you. But we talk about this a lot on the show. Everyone writes at their own pace. It comes to people in different ways. So you got to do you, right? There's no map for it. So cool. So the impetus to switch from sci-fi to thriller really came from the fact that you were. What told you were writing in the wrong genre? Was it? Reviews, feedback, or you just found them hard to market, or you just didn't enjoy it?
I wasn't making any money. And I decided, I was like, if this is going to be my job, then I have to make it work because I can't. I was making a little bit of money, but you can't survive on $2,000 or $3,000 a month, especially when you're in sci-fi and your covers cost that much. Or your editing costs, $600 or $700. Like my costs were far exceeding what I was making. And I was like, this is not sustainable. And the property management thing was winding down. And I was like, I've really got to make this work. So I decided I was going to do a full switch to brand new genre. Actually, because what had happened was I was reading sci-fi to research because I always researched in the genre I'm writing. And I was falling asleep reading it. And I realized, this is boring to me. It's like, why am I in this genre? And I was like, what do I like to read? And I was like, well, I like thrillers and suspense and mysteries because they keep me awake and they keep me guessing. And I'm, always. And so I looked at the genre, at the top of the genre, and I was like, can I do this? Can I write in this genre? Can I write books like this? Can I structure a mystery properly? So that was part of what I had to do. But I basically built out a business plan, top to bottom, of everything that I was going to do. And I didn't make a decision unless I had data behind it. So my pen name which Alex Sigmore is a pen name from my real name, which is Eric. But the pen name, deliberate choice. It's deliberately non-gendered because I knew I was going to be writing in a mostly female-dominated field. And I was like, well, some people balk at that. So why make an extra obstacle? Why not remove an obstacle out of the way? Same thing with the protagonist's name. Like, it's very much on genre. The book title is very much on genre. The covers, everything. And I made the decision early. I was like, I'm only going to email my email list when I have a new release or when I have a pre-order up, because that's what everybody in the genre that I was looking at was doing. So I didn't go into it because when I started sci-fi, I was still new and I didn't really quite know exactly what I was doing. And that first book that you write is kind of all over the place. It's multi-genred, right? And then as you kind of refine, you get into it a little bit more. But I was making choices based on what I thought I needed to do instead of actually having any data on what I actually needed to do.
Gotcha. So it's interesting. We'll get to talk about the female protagonist part later because I'm very interested because I write female protagonists. So I'm curious. And apparently I should have gone with Nikki Harvey or something instead of been genderless. But when you decided to do that switch and you're going to write in this genre, you obviously did the research and looked at the books and found the genre you wanted. And then did you pick out like your top 5 authors that were doing really well and focus some marketing on them? And if you did, who was that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I absolutely did. So I looked at all the genres in mystery and thriller, and I was looking for ones that caught my attention or ones that had books that were high up on the total Amazon store that were at number 1 in their own genre. So I think I learned that from Kyla Stone because I remember her presentations would talk a lot about that. And so I would look at women sleuths, police procedurals, serial killers, kidnapping, all of those within the mystery genre. And I would look at the top authors and I read every single book in the top 20. I read them all in like 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
He's hurt Nick's head just exploded. He's like, I read that fast.
I can't read one book in 2 weeks.
Well, I have to do it that way because what my brain does is it starts training to recognize the patterns. And so as much as I can read, I can see all the patterns in there. And I started to figure out how these things were structured and built. And I was like, can I replicate that? So that's what I did is I would, after I finished reading them all, I sat down and I was like, all right, give myself a month, replicate it, see how it turns out. And then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to find another job because this isn't working.
So but you replicating it, you're talking about like, did you create like a template outline of sorts that's like, this is A, B, and C has to happen in each book? Is that kind of what you're seeing, or is that
I did have a list of tropes. So I would use, tvtropes.com. I would go on there and I would look at, just from like movies and stuff, and I would like, what are the commonalities? And I ended up with a list of probably 20 tropes. And I was like, every single book in the series has to contain these things in one form or another, because that's what I was seeing in all the books that I was reading. And so that's what I did is I made sure I structured a story with all of these different elements in it, and then kind of just kept replicating that over and over again. So each of my books are self-contained stories, and then there's a larger arc over 6 or 7 books for each quote unquote season.
This is just a guess that you're probably a plotter of some sort since you're going to plan this much out, right?
Oh yeah. I'm a heavy plotter. So
are you plotting the 7 book arc or whatever you're doing for your whole season, or you're doing each individual book at that point?
I didn't do the entire story of every single book all the way through 7 books. I kind of set up the story of the first book, set up the entire arc. So I knew where the arc would begin and end, but I didn't have a fully fleshed out middle. But I would have like a 1 paragraph outline of what each book in the series would be. So like the protagonist would find out this in book 2, she'd find out this in book 3, 4, etc., and kind of see how that went along. It changed a little bit as I went along, and wrapping up book 7 in that first season was a little hectic because I had so many threads to close. But it did end up working. And yeah, I'm a heavy plotter. I spend a good week or 2 on the plot, and there usually end up being between 15 and 20,000 words just on plot by itself. What I found is like if I just tried to pants it, I spend so much time going back and trying to rewrite and fix things and correct the errors that it takes more time than the plotting does.
To me, I've always considered myself a planter. I got tent poles that I want to set up, and I know where I'm kind of going, but I don't always plot it all the way out that thoroughly. So
I'll tell you what's really frustrating is when you have a 15 or 20,000 word plot and then your characters decide to do something entirely different you have to throw the whole thing out and do it again. That's fun.
So you've got the 2 series going. So which one came first, and did one spring from the other, or is it completely separate worlds?
So I started writing Emily Slate first. That was the one. And I think I was on book 9 or 10 before I started my second series, which is the Ivy Bishop series. The characters haven't crossed over yet, but that doesn't mean that they can't. They do live in the same universe, but one character wasn't in Emily Slate and then started on her own series. However, I have planted characters that is the ultimate goal eventually. I just haven't gotten to it yet because I can only write so fast.
Are you alternating releases between series?
I am now. It's taken a little while to get into that groove. Actually, launching the second series was a little more difficult than I thought it would be because it's like juggling, right? So you're trying to juggle your one series, but then throwing a new one into the mix. But now I'm finally at a point where in about, I think, a week or two, the next Emily book comes out. And then after that, the next Ivy book, then we'll go back to Emily and I. And we'll just switch back and forth until I decide to throw a third one in there and then really, give myself a run for it.
Yeah, we were just talking about this earlier with somebody else, but we've got enough data points now between friends of ours, and you just echoed the same thing, is when you produce that new series, what you think is you're going to grab all the audience that you have in your first series and immediately they're going to gravitate to the second series. And in truth, that's really not the way it happens. And I think the biggest problem is, and chime in here, both of you, with an opinion on this, but I feel like it's because you can't reach them. Right, you've got a newsletter and you've got X number of people and X percentage of people will actually open that newsletter and see this news. And then you've got so much reach on social media. But when you compare that to the number of people that have read that first series of books, it's way less. You've got no chance of reaching those people apart from ads, which are very hard to spend on one book in a new series. So it seems like, I've done this. Doug's in the process of doing this with a spin-off series. Our friend Don is in the middle of doing it. Speaking with actually RJ, we were talking to last week off the air. We were talking to him about it. It seems like 3 books starts getting the traction. And when you hit 5 books, it's really, it should be hitting full stride. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started out for the first series, I wasn't sure kind of what to expect. So I did meticulous monitoring of all the data points. So I would monitor rank, I would monitor reviews, I would monitor pre-orders for the next book, and then I would compare the differences week to week. And I did that for the first 6 books. And what I was looking to see if the trends were increasing or decreasing. As long as they were increasing, we're fine. And they were. But yeah, I really, books 1 and 2, they were very small. Book 3, it started to pick up steam. By book 5, it kind of exploded. And so I'm only on book 3 of my second series. And the fact that those 3 books have come out over the course of 8 months instead of 8 weeks, like the first series, it makes a big difference. So I didn't have as tight of a release plan on the second series because with the amount of readers that I had, I thought I could take a little bit of a step back. And I was like, maybe I don't have to work as hard, but that's not true. You do have to work as hard. You have to work harder.
So I want to fall back. You said that you only do newsletters on releases with the Alex name. So one, just building a new author profile, that's got to be a huge endeavor. I assume after 25 books as Eric Warren, you had probably a newsletter list and a following of some sort, at least, whether you're making money or not. But then to turn around and rebuild that into a different one, I'd like to know how you kind of did that. Because I think that's one of the big questions a lot of people ask is, how do I get that following?
Yeah, it was daunting to say the least. I think when I left the Eric Warren name, I had around 2,500 people on a mailing list, which is really not that many, but it was 2,500 people. And I knew I was going to be starting over at 0 because I didn't want cross-contamination, because I didn't want to bring all the sci-fi people over and screw up the algorithm, especially when you're starting. And as a side note, none of those people have ever reached out and asked me what happened. I could be dead for as far as they know.
Really?
So And that was the list that I was actively engaged with, that I was, mailing all the time. And I was like, here, look at my dogs. Here, look at all this stuff. I'm doing all this fun stuff. Hey, follow, and it never really made an impact. So that's part of the reason why I decided with the mystery thriller link. I was like, people, they don't care about me. I'll just send them the books. But what I did is I did a reader magnet for the first series, and I just ran ads to it. And the reader magnet, obviously, it's a free 15,000 word story or whatever, and you sign up to the list. And I think the first 3 months, I only had maybe 50 to 100, maybe 150 people total. Like, it was not growing fast, but my bigger concern was getting the name out there and getting the series out there and getting visibility on it, because I knew visibility drove everything. So I was like, the readers will come as long as I put all my effort into visibility. So that's where I put my money, the ads, and I actually ended up using pre-made covers because I was sick of paying $500 to $1,000 per cover.
Are you still using pre-made covers?
On my Emily series, they are all still pre-made except for the very last book. But I've transitioned to actual custom covers now. And I'll probably be recovering the original series. But at the time, it's like, you don't know if it's going to work. I was pretty broke. I was like, I need to save money wherever I can.
So let's talk about female protagonists. So what attracted you to writing a female protagonist in the first place? Just your market research?
It was. I saw, for the genres that I was, or for the highest selling genres that I was seeing, were all female led or mostly female led. And at the time, which was late 2021, early 2022, the trends were showing that male led mystery thriller books were on the decline. So I was like, well, that's an easy decision. I don't know that that's the case anymore. I think that's actually flipped a little bit. I know females are still on the rise, but I don't think males are on the decline anymore. I think they're back either stable or rising again.
Are you using K-Lytics for a lot of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, K-Lytics is pretty cool. Alex, another Alex. He was at NINC, and he did 2 really, really good talks. They're entertaining, number one, and they're full of information, number 2. And he's on the I'll just be entertaining and show you cool stuff that you can get in K-Lytics, and that's the sales pitch, not a lot of others are doing talks and giving you a sales pitch about their stuff. So, but I got a chance to chat with him for a while off to the side at another event, and really interesting guy. So there's so much more to glean out of K-Lytics than I thought there was.
I agree. Yeah, especially, and when you're making database decisions, having a database set of information like he gives out is invaluable. And so, yeah, I pulled so much from K-Lytics. So that's just what I saw was trending well. And I was like, well, I know I can write female protagonists because that's what my first sci-fi series was. For the sci-fi series, I don't even really know why I did. I feel like I enjoy writing women a little better. I've written, so for 2 other sci-fi series, I did male-led, and those were fine. But I don't know. I was like, I'm more comfortable here for some reason. So I just kind of leaned into it.
What do you think are some of the bigger challenges, though? I mean, you guys can both answer this. I only have one series with a female protagonist, but what do you guys think are the biggest challenges from writing?
Do you write first or third person, Alex?
So I actually do both. So Emily's series is first, and then Ivy's series is third. What about you?
I'm same. My AJ Bailey series is third person, and Nora is first person. Nora Summer.
I think what I spoke about before was I was afraid of kind of audience rejection of too many people, just looking and being like, oh, that's a guy that he can't write female, or he can't write female well. And so I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I just sidestepped it the best I could. It was very deliberate that I didn't put my face out there on my pen name or kind of really allude to anything very personal in my bios or anything like that. And I've never really I think I've had one person ask me, and they were like, hey, are you actually a guy or a girl? And I just never responded.
Yeah. That's a rude question these days.
How
don't ask.
rude. I am what I am. I'm curious now, like, did you find a lot of differences when we talking about the tropes and stuff? Did you take the same approach when you were doing sci-fi that you did for thriller? But then to follow up that is, what do you find are the differences as far as how you write, whether it be sometimes the thrillers kind of have short, choppier sentences than the sci-fi. Curious what your thoughts are coming from both different.
Yeah, sci-fi is very involved. I mean, it requires a lot of world building, a lot more world building than, especially because I was doing space opera, and that's universe building. I make the joke that like spoons don't exist. Like something exists that is used as a spoon, but it's not called a spoon. And cars don't exist. Like there's no shorthand. Like you have to do everything. And like I would spend hours just building this encyclopedia of like races and planets and everything under the sun, and what did the ships look like and how do they work and all this other stuff. And I was getting to the point where I almost had like an encyclopedia level of information. And at one point I was planning on putting that out as like a compendium. With mystery thriller, it's just so much easier because it's very much close to us. It's real world. Everything's a lot simpler in terms of that. So you can really focus a lot more on the characters, which I'm someone who writes a lot from the heart. And that got me in trouble in sci-fi because I would deviate off of the more military side, and I kind of let my characters run away with it. It's a good story, but it's not a space opera story that one would traditionally expect. So I think just my own personal style fits a lot better with mystery thriller, just because I feel like I'm in the characters' heads a lot more, and things like it's so much an emotional journey, especially like trying to catch a killer, get justice for victims. Like it becomes much closer than, oh, well, we need to overthrow the bar lords and, start a new civilization.
So I have a question that's always a curiosity, I think, to most writers is, what are you doing with aging your characters?
Yeah. So my characters, I actually follow the real calendar. I think Emily's first book starts in, I think it's either January or February of 2020, but it's a 2020 where the pandemic never happened. Her entire, I think the first 8 or 10 books all happen in that year. So a lot happens back to back. Like I'm like a very many things are happening to her all at once. So it's really only been, I almost keep it in par with like the real world time. So it's been 2 years I've been writing. She's 2 years older than when she started, kind of thing. So I very much stick close to that. It's just she's technically 2 years behind us where we are right now. So it's not in the moment. She's in 2022. We're in 2024.
That gives you a little leeway, right?
Yeah, it does. It gives me a little bit more space. But my other character, Ivy, she's actually a little closer. She's in mid 2023. So I do keep very close tabs of where they are in the calendar and, how much time is passing.
What if, that's a question we all have. You go back to Clive Cussler or Travis McGee or all of them, these authors who've written for, 30 years and their characters stay the same age. Like it's a kind of a requirement if you're going to keep carrying that character on for new generations. In the beginning, it makes a big difference. But if you look at Robert Parker, like his Spencer in book 1, he talks about him being in the Korean War, but they're still putting out Robert Parker and Spencer books now. He's the same age. So, I think
it's a different audience though, right? Because the audience is changed. And they say the audience, I can't remember, it might have been Alex who said this, but the audience flips on you every like 5 or 6 years. So you're getting a brand new set of people coming in every couple of years. But yeah, I think the readers at a certain point, they suspend disbelief because they're like, well, there's another killer in this town. Are you kidding me? Like, obviously. So I think they start to just kind of accept it. And at that point, they just love the characters so much. They just want to spend as much time as they can with them. And they don't really care about how old they're getting.
Yeah, it works when they're in New York because they're killing people left, right, and center, or downtown LA. But when you're in this sleepy little town in the middle of Virginia or what have you, it's kind of weird that all these bad things, it's like I'd move out of that town if I was there.
I would just not live there.
Yeah.
We always joke, and you never invite Angela Lansbury to your dinner party because somebody's going to die. You never let your kids play with Little House on the Prairie kids because they'll fall in a well. Don't do that.
Stone cold killers, man.
The other part about the aging thing is how quickly you're releasing, back in the trad days where they're putting out a book every 18 months or 2 years, perhaps. There's a lot of time passing with each one. You're putting out a lot of books. So you've already, over 2 years of your protagonist lifespan, you've got like 20-something books. So with one of my series, the A.J. Bailey series, I started her off being, I think it was 26. So she's now, when she turned 30, I'm like, okay, do I keep going? Do I keep aging her? So time keeps going, but I think I just don't mention, I used to put some dates in the older books. I don't anymore. And just as a side note, I look at my publishing date, and that's the time of year that the book is set. So that automatically means that it's sequential in the series. So I can't screw it up. It's kind of a safety valve.
Yeah, I don't do that. I just kind of like, I'm writing the book and go, I guess I should decide on what time of the year. Yeah, I have to figure that out.
But I mean, both of you guys, all your books are set in the Caribbean, so you always have like good weather, right?
It's always good weather. Yeah, it's pretty much most of the time. So we're always going to have something sunny. Like, nobody wants to hear it snow,
I got a Christmas book coming out, and it's still sunny.
All right, so I have a kind of a question. I want to kind of dig into it just a little bit. So since a lot of our listeners are new writers and stuff who are taking like some of your thoughts about the data-driven ideas, like what's a kind of a, I'm a newbie. I kind of want to come in here and I'm like, that's a good idea. How should I look at this? What kind of data? I mean, you kind of touched a little bit on it, but can you give us a little bit, the TL, the too long didn't read version?
The type of data and where to get it.
Okay. So yeah, sure. I think first off, you have to step into this with the mindset of business, right? We're all business people. We're running a business. We're doing this to make money to, sustain our lives and feed ourselves. And so you can't be super precious about your books. They're not your babies. They're kind of like your employees. They're out there to do your job and help you, bring in money. With that in mind, you really have to decide if you want to make money in this business. You have to decide, well, do I want to write what I want to write, or do I want to write what the audience wants to read? And if you want to write what the audience wants to read, aka make more money, then you start going onto the boards or onto the sales platforms, and you see what's selling the best. Do you like a particular genre? Who's selling the best in that genre? Which authors are at the top? Which are consistently at the top, and which are doing consistent new releases and are not just flash in the pan kind of thing. Once you have an idea about that, then you can start doing a deeper dive into those genres. And so K-Lytics is one thing that we mentioned. Start monitoring the genres, just watch them every day. See, who's coming in, what they're doing, what the reviews are like. Read all the reviews. See what people like about the books. See what they don't like about the books. Look for the commonalities. Look for everything that's similar. And then you can start crafting a, story kind of around that. Because I see us as we're in the entertainment business, just like people who make TV or movies or anything like that. We're out there to entertain people. So there's no sense in writing something that's not going to be entertaining for anybody, right? So we have to figure out what people want and then just give it to them. Like it sounds so easy, but it's like you have to really, and sometimes people don't know exactly what they want, or they think they want something else, and you have to manage that, right? So it's pretty much that simple. It's not, I didn't spend a lot of money on programs, or I did use KDP Rocket because it has a really good keyword analyzation tool. I think that's important. And that's pretty much it. Like I just went in there every day and I was looking at data, and I hate math. Like I had to quote unquote pull myself out of my statistics class in college because I was going to fail it. And I didn't want an F on my report card. So math is not my strong suit, but you have to be able to understand income, revenue, gross profits, net profits. You have to be able to understand how the business works in order to make this work for you, right? And some of that's trial by fire. For me, it was 5 years of trial by fire, of banging my head against the wall, and it just turns out I had to switch genres.
Mind you, he does all that, and he writes 9 books a year.
You are a productive individual. Yeah. So a question we ask everyone, Alex, and I think you've kind of already answered it, but what do you consider as your author superpower, whether it's in the marketing field or the creative field, or what do you think is the one thing that you really do right?
I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about this because I listened to a lot of your episodes, and I know this question's coming. So
you're the one. Thank you.
But I think my superpower is I'm just too stubborn to quit.
That's a common thread. We've heard that before, yeah.
Because when things start going wrong, I just get angrier and more determined to make it right. So like if things are going in the wrong direction, I double down on everything. I'm like, all right, I got to figure out what's going wrong and I'm going to fix it. So that sometimes that's not a great thing because I'll spend, 15 hours a day working on a problem, and my wife probably doesn't like that very much, but I do happen to get through it. Saying that at the same time is like, I do take breaks. Like I'm not, 100% machine all the time. I can't do that. So that's what this year's been about. I've been taking a lot more breaks, kind of loosen the release schedule a little bit. So I'm not.
Find a balance.
Yeah. Trying to find that balance.
Yeah. Great. Good answer. I think that is a really common thread we're seeing as we, interesting for us. So interesting to chat with you guys and chat with other authors. And that's been a common theme. It seems like people have they're going to make it work. It is a business. You've got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it's part of that process. So
yeah, I don't think that you fail until you quit. So as long as I don't quit, I haven't failed yet.
All right, Doug, get that wheel out.
Oh, it really is a wheel.
No one believes us. We say it every time.
Wow. Okay. I thought you were just making like a little noise or something, but that's actually a wheel.
No, it does. So it's like, hey, $1. It's like being Price is Right. Okay, good one here. What do you think is your number one marketing tool?
It's the next book in the series. It's always the next book in the series. And that was something I realized early on. I knew that this pen name would be driven by releases because you can only count on ads to get you so far. And I knew I wasn't going to hit it lucky. So I was like, it's got to be releases. And so every single book, that's what runs the whole thing. And that's why I can't really quit because I keep writing more.
Yeah. Brilliant. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. And we look forward to seeing you again at one of these, one of the author conferences or events.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'll see me around. I'm not going anywhere, fingers crossed. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys bringing me on. I love this podcast. So it's such a treat to be a part of it.
Well, thank you very much. And good luck with everything that's coming up.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. That was awesome. He was great.
That was great. Yeah. A really interesting guy. I mean, I love the very analytical and so creative on one side, yet analytical and very determined on the other side, right?
And I think that's kind of important. I think that we've touched on a lot of things that I think, and I feel like sometimes I repeat this to people who come and ask me, questions about getting started. And it's really like, you need 3 or 4 books. You need to be able to release fast, but you need to know what you're releasing is hitting the mark on what people want. And I think that makes a big difference. And obviously Alex to dig into that and really the way he did, it's phenomenal. So
what a leap of faith. 25 books. Yeah, you're 25 books. And he goes, you know what? Let's just pack that stuff up and just start over fresh from here, from ground zero.
But let's, and I've said this too, because I have a series, my Max Sawyer series, which is, I only did 6 books in before I was like, and I thought 6 was probably more than I should have done before I gave up on it, because, sometimes they just don't bite, and you need to, it's not, we got to look at it as a business from our standpoint. And so we got to say, is this working for us, or is this just a passion project? And if it's a passion project, then there's nothing wrong with that, but don't expect to make money on it. So,
yeah. Anything exciting happening with you? You've been writing like a demon.
I'm just writing like a demon right now. I want to get this next book in the Chase series finished. And then I've got a few other series. I'm, with another one for the Corsair series coming up right behind it. And maybe something in between there. I don't know. I've got some things I'm toying with, including Missing in Hawaii, which I need to get on my side of.
Yeah, it's your turn, buddy.
So how about you, sir?
Well, Festive Summer came out and really pleased, well received, and that's gone super well. So it's a fun one. So yeah, that's the big thing. Working on the next one now. So cool. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Check out the show notes for the links, guest info, our book, social media, all that good stuff. And then until next time, be cool to each other.
Fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform for alerts on new shows coming every 2 weeks.